Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We have been trying to understand Kriyayogi. As I said last time, Patanjali has not been equated with Kriyayogi as much as Patanjali has been equated with Ashtanga Yoga. And that's an unfortunate travesty. It is because of the time that we are in that we fail to understand the importance of Kriyayogi, which is mentioned by Patanjali. And the Ashtanga Yoga seems to be more relevant, and of course it is relevant to our world. And the Adhamadhikaris, and of course we in this world are Adhamadhamadhikari, and therefore we are inclined to understand Ashtanga Yoga and relate Patanjali to Ashtanga Yoga more than Patanjali to Kriya Yoga. But in classical times, Kriya Yoga had a greater importance. So I've been endeavoring to explain out what is this Kriya Yoga. So if we have to really understand what is Kriya Yoga, and with the sutra that Patanjali gives, tapaswadhyayeshvara pranidhanani Kriya Yoga, and of course the following sutra, which actually opens out the whole purport as to why Kriya Yoga. If we put a question as to why do we do our yoga today, what is our answer? So why yoga today? Today yoga is for well-being, fitness, mental well-being, physical well-being, to facilitate our mundane life, worldly life. We don't want to compromise with our mundane life. We want to live the mundane and worldly life more successfully and for a longer time, without any hitch or without any obstacle, without any hurdles. That is why we are doing yoga. We don't want to change our life. We want to live our life, materialistic life, mundane life, and then we want to have easy negotiations, unobstructed negotiations in our life, and therefore we are doing yoga. In simple words, we are doing yoga for our physical and mental well-being, so that with physical and mental well-being we will be able to go after Preyas. Upanishad explains this Preyas. It explains reyas and Preyas. Mundukopanis is a wonderful precept on Shreyas and Preyas. So we commoners, we worldly people are going after Preyas. Go after what we like. And we want to attain what we like. We want to attain what we like, what we want, what we cherish. And we want our life to be not obstructing in that process. So in again, further simpler words, it is for our physical, mental well-being, not tormented by ill health of body and ill health of mind, and so that we can go after what we really want, what we love, what we like, what we want to have. So that's called Preyas. So why yoga today is that it is Preyas. But in Upanishadic culture and Upanishadic time and Upanishadic ethos, like Mundukopanis says that one should go after Shreyas and not Preyas. So, what is Shreyas? The Shreyas is something which is ultimately good. That is called Shreyas. And the whole Adhyatma and Paramartha is for Shreyas. So, why our yoga is for Preyas? For mundanity, mundane comfort, mundane ease, unobstructed mundanity, mundane experiences. We don't want ill health of body and mind to be obstructing our course of life, which is subsumed, permeated by mundanity, and which is subsumed by our wants, our likes. We want to go after our likes. We want to go after our wants. We want to get gratification with respect to our wants and with respect to what we love, what we like. So that is why we do yoga. That is what our yoga is. But this Kriya Yoga is of yoga of a higher hierarchy, which is higher hierarchy than us. Precisely, it is called Madhyama dhikari, middle hierarchy. These Madhyama dhikaris are Himalayan personalities in the spiritual realm. And we are not a force to reckon with in spiritual life at all. We have no existence because of our stark materialism, stark mundanity. But Madhyamadhikari is one who is really Himalayan person in spiritual realm who is going after Shreyas. So if we put a question why the Kriyayogi goes after Kriyayoga, it is not the answer that we have for ourselves as to why we go after yoga, why we are doing yoga, why we are dedicated to yoga, why we are sincere in yoga, why we are relentlessly doing yoga. Perhaps some of us are so dedicated to yoga that we relentlessly do yoga, we go wholeheartedly for yoga, but our heart is filled up with the Preyas. It is ruled over by the Preyas, that is our empirical likes, psychomental likes, psychomental loves, psychomental attachments, psychomental craving. And then we therefore are sincerely going after our yoga. So we will get an answer about what the Kriya Yoga is, because we are struggling to characterize the Kriya Yoga and Kriya Yogi in last quite number of sessions. So the answer to that lies in one question. If you pose, why Kriya Yogi goes after Kriya Yoga? So the answer to this question is totally different than answer to the same question when it is posed to us. I just now gave you at length, if the same question is posed to us, what is our answer? Physical, mental well-being, well-managed mundanity, well-managed mundane life, unobstructed mundane life, unimpeded mundane life, unimpeded personal life. But why the Kriya Yoga? For Kriya Yogi, the answer is given by Patanjali, samadhi bhavana rthah and klesha atanukarnarthah. We don't do our yoga for samadhi. We do our yoga for physical, mental well-being. We are doing our yoga for sound body and sound mind. In our idea of soundness of body and mind, in our notion, our concept of sound body and sound mind. But Kriya Yogi does Kriya Yoga for samadhi bhavanartham. That is, actualization of samadhi. That means he is equipped to get samadhi, and now he wants to do Kriya Yoga for actualization of this state of samadhi. Like we ourselves prepare at night to be getting a good sound sleep, we take care to see that, utmost care to see that we will try to get a good sleep, and we will get a good sleep. What do we do at night to have a good sleep? Do you keep all the windows and doors open of a house so that you will get a sound sleep? So you take some precautions, such as you should be secured. You close your doors, you bolt your doors, you lock your doors. And so try to imagine, what do we do to get a sound sleep at night? Similarly, yogi does something for samadhi. Now we can do something that is needed for a good sound sleep. However, we may not succeed, but we try to take every precaution, starting from closing the doors, bolting the doors, locking the doors, switching off the lights, switching out of the lights in an entire house. Whatever has to be arranged in the kitchen, etc., we do it. And then we go to toilet so that we will be getting a good sound sleep. And maybe these days we brush our teeth, etc., etc. And we do certain things. What one will be doing will be known to oneself as to what one does, what kind of precaution one takes to see that one tries to get sleep. Whether one gets or not is a different thing. It depends upon so many other factors. But as far as possible, we take certain precautions. But we really don't try to consider it. Now today, here in this context, we have to consider it, we have to recall it, and we have to have clear idea as to how do we go to sleep, what precautions do we take. Similarly, yogi does something for samadhi. Because we have potentials to sleep, but we do something to get sleep. So samadhi potentially is there in yogi, but he has to do certain things to get into samadhi, go into samadhi. His yoga is to go into samadhi. Unlike our yoga is to do something with body, mind and breath. Here, Kriyayogi does something for getting samadhi, because we don't expect samadhi form of yoga. We expect some other form of yoga. We want to have some other form of yoga that you can very well ascertain what is yoga for you. When do you say that your yoga is done? When do you say, after something has happened, where you say your yoga is successful, your session is successful, you have done yoga? When do you say that you have done yoga? So try to take an account of it. When do you really say and feel and claim that you have practiced your yoga? What state you expect out of your yoga, whereby you say, I have just now finished my yoga. And then why do you start yoga and why do you end yoga? Where do you end yoga? Where do you say that your yoga has ended? And when do you say that your yoga is started? So that must be crystallized. Each one can do it. When do you say that you have started your yoga? And when do you say that you are doing yoga? And when do you say that you have done yoga? So try to have clear understanding of these questions and their answers. Now, with reference to Kriyayogi, it is different. Why Kriyayogi starts his yoga? When does he say that he is doing his yoga? And when does he say that his yoga is done? These are altogether different answers. So, Patanjali has briefly mentioned here, which we need to decipher and understand. Samadhi bhavana rthah. Samadhi bhavana. Samadhi actualization. And klesha atanukarnarthah. So therefore the sutra Samadhi bhavanarthah klesha atanukarnarthascha is the sutra. Klesha atanukaranam. Why Kriyayogi embarks upon Kriya Yoga is to attenuate kleshas. We embark upon our yoga to attenuate some distress or unrest, some turbulence in mind, which we ourselves cannot put up with. When we cannot put up with our own mind, if we are used to yoga technology, we do our yoga and overcome that turmoil of the mind, disrest in our mind, restlessness in our mind, and get the state that we expect. That is just restful mind, quiet mind, serene mind. And when we get it, we say, my yoga is done. So we also try to do for something called as vritti management. Our yoga is for vritti vyavasthapanam. So our yoga is for sharirarogyam, swasthyam and vritti vyavasthapanam. We want well-settled mind out of our yoga. Or more settled mind. If we are settled already, we want more settled. If our mind is not settled, we want the settled condition of the mind. So either settled condition of the mind or more settled condition of the mind. So our yoga, if we have to put it in the same aphoristic form, where Kriya Yoga is Samadhi Bhavanarthah, Klesha Atanukarnarthascha, our yoga is Sharira Manasa Arogya Swasthya Vritti Vyavasthapanascha, if I may say so. We want our vrittis, manovrittis to be settled. We don't work for chitta vrittis, we work for manovrittis. We want our mind to be settled. We don't go for settled condition of the chitta because we do not know what is chitta. We see that indistinction between chitta and manas. We have no distinction between manas and the chitta. But with reference to Kriyayogi, it is samadhi in the chitta, klesha atanukaranam in the chitta. In our case, it is sharirarogyam in body and mind, sharira manasa arogya or arogya swasthyam in the body and mind, and vritti vyavasthapanam in body and mind, corporeal body and psychological mind. So that is the difference. The Kriyayogi is not bothered about torment of the mind because his mind is really not tormented, although there might be inclement conditions like saints. You understand the saints, you have read the Gospels of noble people, saints and yogis and sages. They had difficulties in their life. They countered upheavals in their life, upheavals in mind and emotions, but they were unperturbed because of their making. So, mental distress, mental agony really doesn't bother them. as much as it bothers us, because we identify ourselves with our mind and we say, I am vexed. Whereas a Kriya Yogi, because of his imbibing of philosophy of Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, he says, my mind is tormented. He doesn't say, I am tormented. He says, my mind is vexed, but not I am vexed. But in our case, when the mind is vexed, we are invariably vexed because of level of our consciousness as against the level of consciousness of a Kriya Yogi. So he doesn't have to bother about anything happening to body, anything happening to mind. But in our case, anything happening to body, untoward thing happening to body, untoward thing happening to mind is happening to ourselves. Many of you know that Ramakrishna Paramahamsa had cancer, Ramana Maharshi had tumor, but they never identified themselves with the diseases. Because of their transcendence in consciousness, they said that the body is suffering, the mind is suffering, I am not suffering. That's because of the philosophical values inculcated, given by the Upanishads. Atma is avikari. Are we avikari? Not at all. The vikara of body is our vikara. Vikara of the mind is our vikara. Any mutiny in the body is mutiny in ourselves. Any mutiny in the mind is mutiny in ourselves. So Kriya Yogi does his Kriya Yoga for altogether different purpose, which is samadhi bhavana and kleshas. Now you can understand or have some basis to understand what is the difference between a Kriya Yogi and one who is not a Kriya Yogi, or perhaps someone like us. We also make pursuit of yoga. Now it's a global culture, global fashion to be going after yoga. Everyone should do yoga is what we are hearing from all quarters. So now you can understand how Kriya Yoga is also is different just because of why for that yoga as against why for our yoga. So if you have a thought process over this about why of yoga with regards to you and me and why of yoga with regards to someone who is karma yogi, you will see the stark difference. Now, another thing needs to be cleared out is that don't think that Kriya Yogis are not in Ashtanga Yoga. The Kriya Yogis also will be practicing Ashtanga Yoga. But their Ashtanga Yoga will be for the purpose just now sounded, which is different than our purpose of Ashtanga Yoga. If we are pursuing Ashtanga Yoga, why do we pursue Ashtanga Yoga? Put this question. And if a Kriya Yogi is also pursuing Ashtanga Yoga, why will he pursue Ashtanga Yoga? Because he is now well aware of all esoteric aspects of yoga. He is totally drenched in classical yoga, whereas we are trying to get touch of classical yoga. We are trying to just get touch of classical yoga. He is drenched, he is soaked in classical Ashtanga Yoga. So it should not be construed that Kriya Yogi doesn't have to practice, or he doesn't at all practice Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga will be still there. So now these Ashtangas are reduced into three, which are of the nature of three in one. The tapaswadhyaya Ishvara pranidhana of Kriya Yoga is nothing but it is quintessential or hypostatized Ashtanga Yoga. Hypostatized means what is called as arka. So the substance of Ashtanga Yoga, when it is squeezed out, and when you get whatever substance, it is the essence of Ashtanga Yoga. So that essence of Ashtanga Yoga is of the nature of tapas, svadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana. So as you do the factors in algebra, in mathematics, so these are factors again. Ashtanga Yoga is opening the factors of Kriya Yoga, and Kriya Yoga is closing the factors of Ashtanga Yoga. So it should not be deemed or taken as that Kriya Yogi is not in Ashtanga Yoga. It is not that Ashtanga Yoga is meant for Adhamadhikari, and now the yogi gives up Ashtanga Yoga. He is with essence of Ashtanga Yoga. Essence is always different than the matter of which it is substance or essence. Like rose is different than rose essence. So rose essence is not from rose, but it is from rose. So there is rose in rose essence, but then it is essence of rose. Similarly, Kriya Yoga is essence of Ashtanga Yoga, if you can understand that. So when yoga philosophy is well inculcated, Sankhya philosophy, Vedanta philosophy, Adhyatma is well inculcated, imbibed, then the yogi, Kriya Yogi, is able to work on essence of Ashtanga Yoga. So it will not be in the form that we have it. Like rose has color, has petals, and its parts, etc. But if you take up rose essence, you don't see the petals. You don't see those phenomenal aspects of rose flower. But yet you call it essence of rose. So essence of Ashtanga Yoga is called Kriya Yoga. Have you understood? It is not that Ashtanga Yoga is now over and now it is given up and Kriya Yogi is practicing some other yoga altogether. That's not the case. He is now in essence of Ashtanga Yoga, quintessential aspects of Ashtanga Yoga. So just as in rose essence you don't see the parts of rose flower, you don't see the parts of Ashtanga Yoga in the form of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, or ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, shaucha, sandosha, tapas, svadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, etc. But it will be samadhi. Samadhi is an essence of whole yoga. Samadhi is whole yoga. It doesn't mean that those limbs are amputated. This should be understood. So, this misunderstanding should not be there. One should not misconstrue that Patanjali's Kriya Yoga means absence of Ashtanga Yoga and a new yoga. No, it is essence of Ashtanga Yoga. So in quintessential form, there will be ahimsadi yamas, shauchadi niyamas, asana pranayam pratyaharadi, bhiranga sadhanas, they all will come in quintessential form. So that clarification is also necessary to really construe what is this Kriya Yoga. And therefore samadhi bhavanartham. Because you know that samadhi is the last limb of Ashtanga Yoga. That means all the 7 earlier are included in samadhi. Or samadhi is outcome of all 7, well arranged, well set and fructifying. Like we have parts of body, but one can be having a condition with amputated legs and amputated arms. But that's not the case here. There is no amputation. Because if it is amputated, then that body is called Vikalanga and not Sarvanga. Although the person exists, despite a part of the leg or leg amputated, part of the arm or hand or the entire arm amputated, still the person exists. That is not the case of Ashtanga Yoga. Then it will be Vikalanga. But the mention is Yoganga Anushthanat, not Vikalanga Anushthanat, that you have no all these parts of the body, no parts of Yama, Niyama, etc. It is complete, Sarvanga. So in case you feel that the Kriyayogi or a Uttamadhikari doesn't practice Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahar, and his yoga is only dhana and samadhi, it is mistaken. It's not like that. Then it would be Vikalanga Yoga. But that is nowhere endorsed by the text, and the text is proclaiming the Sarvangata. Anyway, that is what is Kriya Yoga is. That Ashtanga Yoga is in a condensed form, or in its quintessential form, or the essence of it is Kriya Yoga. And therefore, samadhi bhavana rthah. So, to actualize the samadhi state. And secondly, kleshatanutvam, kleshatanukarnam. Now we don't do any of our yoga for klesha management. We do our yoga for manovrutti management, not chitta vritti management. So as students of yoga, you should be clear about chitta vritti and manovrutti. Patanjali is not mentioning manovrutti nirodha, but chitta vritti nirodha. So we just want to get rid of the troublesome manovrittis. And that is surfacial mind, superficial mind, with which we are vexed. We are not vexed by the deep mind. We are vexed by the surface mind. Whereas here the kleshas are different than manas. The kleshas are in the chitta. And the kleshas, you will come to know when we really try to understand klesha in the following part of the text, which immediately follows, because kleshas are explained immediately after this. So I will not go in advance to explain you what is kleshas. But in brief, I will tell you the kleshas are something which are our party packs. We enjoy them, we relish them. We try to gratify our kleshas. That is our mundane life. Mundane life is to pamper kleshas. Mundane life is to nourish the kleshas. And the mundane life is to enjoy the kleshas. We are enjoying kleshas. We are enjoying our avidya. That's why we are able to carry out our worldly life, mundane life. If the avidya got risen, then of course we will not be able to carry out our mundane life as somebody's father, somebody's mother, somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's wife, somebody's husband, somebody's daughter, somebody's sister. All that won't be there. So we will lose, our mundane life will be paralyzed with absence of kleshas or weakening of kleshas. So we want to reinforce and strengthen and fortify the kleshas for our mundane life to be successful. So we are all enjoying kleshas. Klesha is our party items. Party food. What is party food than regular food? So there is extra gratification in a party food. You don't like someone calling for a party and giving you the usual food. You would say, I would have had it back home myself. Why did you make me come all the way? So what is party food and what is normal food? There's a big difference. So kleshas are something like party food. Our moment to moment enjoyment in life, delight in life, happiness in life, contentment in life, gratification in life is because of kleshas harvested. And yogi wants to deforestate the kleshas. He wants to diminish the kleshas. He wants to be getting rid of kleshas while we want to nourish the kleshas. This is the difference between the Adhamadhikaris and Adhamadhamadhikaris and Madhyamadhikari. Therefore, his Kriyayoga is for tanukaranam of that which we try to nourish by our yoga. Because yoga will keep us healthy, physically, mentally, and therefore we can go for more and more gratification and longer gratification. Whereas the yogi, because of the philosophy imbibed, which is of Gnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, which we have briefly considered, now he wants to get rid of those things to which we are pouncing upon. We are pouncing upon those things from which he wants to be getting released. So that is klesha tanukaranam. So as I said, the Ashtanga yoga is closed in factors to be condensed in tapas, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana, integrated. What is tapas? Why do we perform tapas, austerities, etc.? We want to have extraordinary power and we want to stand out in the world in our abilities, in our capacities, in our capabilities, and therefore we perform our tapas. We want to be extraordinary beings, extraordinary human beings. We want to be human beings but extraordinary, outstanding, standing out. That's why the special endeavors are there. The common man doesn't carry out these special endeavors, and therefore common man dies as a common man. But some people really practice something that can be called as tapas, to become extraordinary human beings, so they stand out. They get a status, unusual status, very tall status. They get a very tall pedestal on which we place them, and we want to look up to look at them. So that is the tapas that we do. That's why we do our tapas, to excel in particular field. We put extraordinary efforts. We go all out. We schematize, strategize our efforts so that we really stand out and become outstanding. So we put exalted efforts and then we shine forth in the particular field. And therefore they say this is superhuman endeavor, because generally human beings won't carry out such an endeavor. Oh, that is what tapas is for worldly people like you and me. If you want to stand out in status, in capacities, in capabilities and abilities, then of course we dedicate to some kind of act which really makes us shining gloriously in our fields, our realms. Whereas here, the Kriyayogi is not looking for that. His life itself is tapoputa, That means it is, for you and me it is tapas. For him it is not tapas. If you look at life of Jnaneshwar Maharaj, then we see that there was enormous amount of restraint, enormous amount of reformation, enormous amount of control. And for us that is tapas. But for them it is not. It is very natural, very spontaneous. But they are heading towards paramartha. So they also have that goal in their minds, to be going towards paramartha, supreme human endeavor, spiritual. So they have a goal. So even we people, when we have a goal and we have strong gravity for the goal, we perform extraordinary feats, extraordinary efforts, endeavors, and that is tapas. So these yogis have that at their sight. Brahmikaranam. They have a goal. That is the goal. That is the paramartha. And therefore their life is organized, strategized, disciplined, and single-minded. Because for any tapas we need to have single-mindedness. But why do we have single-mindedness? Is mundane reason. But why this yogi has single-mindedness is because of this spiritual purpose, adhyatmic purpose, paramarthic purpose, paramartha, supreme spiritual endeavor. So that is why that is the tapas aspect there. He is not performing tapas to get name, fame, recognition, status, money, wealth, etc. and people hovering around him as the greatest man ever walked on the planet, etc. But he is doing all that to be really getting away from the gravity of this world. So his tapas is of the nature of escape gravity from mundane world and not get into the gravity, but escape the gravity of the mundane forces. That is why it is tapas. It is tapas of that nature. Swadhyaya, Vedadhyayam, Veda Shastradhyayanam, 4 Vedas, 4 Upavedas, Shadanga Vedas, Shadangas of the Vedas, Shada Upangas of the Vedas. Why one makes Swadhyaya? Why somebody is studying Bhagavad Gita? Why is someone studying Upanishads? To again develop eloquence and blazing forth wisdom to dazzle the people around. Oh, what a wise man. What a knowledgeable man. So he is trying to become erudite in all those Dharma Shastra, Moksha Shastra, Yoga Shastra, Karma Shastra, Dharma Shastra, Adhyatma Shastra. He is resource of all informations, and people would go to him. Just as you go for Google search for any information, in the spiritual realm, people go for information and they try to get information from this very wise person who has studied Vedas thoroughly, who has studied Shastras thoroughly. He studies the Vedas thoroughly so that he can be in argumentation and win the arguments. He can win the polemic war. And he would be unconquered, and he would be conquering everyone in the knowledge realm. So he wants to be formidable person in the realm of knowledge, undefeatable and defeating everyone else. So he wants to have that skill of argument, skill of communicating and convincing people about the wisdom that he has, and then enchant the people with the wisdom that he has. So that's why he reads Shastras thoroughly. He reads the Mimamsa Shastra, Purva Mimamsa, Uttar Mimamsa, Dharma Mimamsa, Karma Mimamsa, Yoga Mimamsa. He's thorough in all those studies, and that is why he does Swadhyaya. So those Ashtadasha Vidyas, or Dashavidya sthanas or Chaturdasha vidyas. So he wants to be well versed in all the vidyas so that he can be talking about those vidyas and would be amazing the people with his wisdom, or he can be in argumentation and come victorious, and that he can be undefeatable in any argument in the field of Shastras. That is why the Swadhyaya is done. In Swadhyaya includes Mantra Shastram, so Mantra Upasana is also done for some extraordinary powers to have. That is why he does Mantra Upasana, that is why he does Moksha Shastra Adhyanam, to dazzle people. But here, Swadhyaya is totally for a different purpose. It is not to improve the face value of Kriyayogi for himself and for the world, but for his own process of Kriya Yoga, that he has Swadhyaya. He does Mantropasana, he does Moksha Shastra Adhyanam for his own purpose. It is not for his mouth and speech organ to become glorious, and his embodiment to become glorious, that he becomes superhuman man or superhuman. But it is for his own sake that there is Swadhyaya. So he reads Bhagavad Gita for his own consciousness. It is not for him to get in front of a microphone and then broadcast his knowledge. So his Swadhyaya is for himself. His Mantropasana is for himself. His Moksha Shastra Adhyanam is for himself. And it is not to prove the world that he is a sagacious and wise person. He doesn't want that face value of his to be increased by that, but he wants to improve the internal value of himself, for himself, within himself. So that is why he does Swadhyaya. So also Ishvara Pranidhana. He does for his own consciousness and not to get acclaim as the great and greatest of bhaktas. It is not for him to stand out as a bhakti yogi that he does bhakti yoga. So he does Jnana Yoga Anushtanam not for the world to recognize that he is a Jnana Yogi, but it is for himself to be getting benefit of his Jnana Yoga. Karma Yogi, it is not for the world to be dazzled by him being Karma Yogi, but it is for he himself. He does Karma Yoga, Chitta Shuddhyartham, Atma Shuddhyartham, and not for Laukikam, not for name, fame, recognition, outstanding pedestal to be given by people. So also Dhyana Yoga is not for the world to be getting dazzled by his Dhyana Yogic abilities, but Dhyana Yoga is for himself. So also Bhakti Yoga. It is not Bhakti Yoga for the whole world to recognize that he is the greatest Bhakta of all times or he is one of the greatest Bhakta. It is Bhakti is for he himself. So the kleshas would be attenuated. If there is express value to Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga and Dhyana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, then it won't attenuate kleshas. When the wisdom or this Dhyana, Karma, Dhyana, Bhakti Yoga is portrayed outwardly, then it is to dazzle people. Then it won't work on his kleshas, but he turns those inwards. So people don't cite it, that he is the greatest Jnana Yogi, Karma Yogi, Dhyana Yogi, Bhakti Yogi, but it works for kleshas atanukarnarthah. So that's how the tapas is for oneself, for one's paramartha. Swadhyaya is for oneself, for one's own paramartha. Ishvara Pranidhana is for oneself, for one's own paramartha. So this would be working like pest control works on worms and insects. This yoga chatushtya, the four kinds of yoga would work as pest controls on klesha. and the kleshas would be attenuated. So, the meaning of tapas is totally different than the meaning of tapas that comes in niyamas. The meaning of swadhyaya is totally different than the meaning of swadhyaya that comes in niyamas. Ishwar pranidhana that comes here, it is totally different than Ishwar pranidhana mentioned in the niyamas. Because this will be repeated. The connotations are different. Tapas, swadhyaya, Ishwar pranidhana will again appear in niyamas, but connotation differs. This is the connotation here. This is Kriya Yoga, and this is of a Kriyayogi. So one more session I have dedicated to convey that Kriya Yoga and Kriyayogi are different, and why and how Kriya Yoga is different. Although the same things are appearing here. Niyamas seem to be more pervasive. There are 5 niyamas, and there are 3 of the niyamas. But why this is more pervasive? Because this is the essence of all Ashtanga. This is the essence of all Bahiranga sadhana, precisely. But there it is not essence of Bahiranga sadhana in niyamas. It is part of Ashtanga. So the words will repeat, but the meanings are going to change. This also should be borne in mind. So this was one more endeavor to explain that Kriya Yoga is for samadhi bhavanartha and klesha atanukarnarthah. So with that, we will end the session today. Namaskar all of you.